turning now to another big story coming out of Texas that we've been following. Before the state banned nearly all abortions, women who had miscarriages had better access to basic, potentially life-saving care. One key procedure, called a D&C, or a dilation and curettage, was routinely used to prevent life-threatening bleeding. But because D&Cs are also used for abortions, Texas and other states wrapped them up in restrictive laws. Now, many doctors are afraid to perform them. ProPublica found that since the 2022 ban, more women in Texas are nearly bleeding to death during miscarriage. According to their reporting, blood transfusions after miscarriages have jumped 54%. On with us now, former Texas state senator and senior advisor to Planned Parenthood Texas Votes, Wendy Davis, and ProPublica reporter Kavita Sarana. Kavita, I want to start with you. You have this incredible reporting about how the change to the law has affected access to care for women who have miscarriages. And I'm just curious if you could walk us through how has limited access to D&Cs or other kinds of treatment affected deaths in the states you've been reporting on.
Well, this data that we most recently published is hospital discharge data. It's a robust data set that looks at morbidity, severe outcomes, or allows us to look at severe outcomes. We are looking at Texas because it's the state that's the largest state with an abortion ban and has the longest history, having banned abortion for the first time in 2021. So we were able to look at this data and find that in women who had a miscarriage in the first trimester, who had to go to the emergency room, blood transfusions went up 54%. Most miscarriages involve some bleeding, but when they get to the point that they need a blood transfusion, doctors told us that that basically is a hemorrhage. It's a life-threatening condition. Doctors have a tool to prevent that outcome, offering women much earlier in a miscarriage the option to have a D&C, which is basically a suction procedure most of the time that vacuums out the remaining fetal tissue and allows the uterus to clamp down and close, stop the bleeding quicker so it doesn't get to that point. But doctors in Texas have been telling us that they're much less likely to offer that procedure, especially because the law has such severe penalties for providing an abortion. This procedure is also used in abortion. And so they're relying often on even higher criteria to document that a pregnancy has ended. The law says something about it's not considered an abortion if you're removing a dead unborn child, and doctors say that's not a scientific term for what's happening in early pregnancy, but it's leading to more reliance on a criteria where they could document that there was a pregnancy and that there's no longer a pregnancy, which isn't the standard of care.
Wendy, can you reflect for a moment on where the messaging, the fight for reproductive rights will go from here, but also as you look back now a couple months removed from the 2024 election, how do you look at the sort of the perspective, the mood of voters on this issue and what matters to them and how that is sort of translating in this very moment?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to ProPublica for the incredible reporting that they've been doing on the impacts of the abortion ban in Texas. Their story that came out prior to the election that demonstrated the fact that at least 4 women have lost their lives because they were denied abortion care when it was medically necessary. And now, of course, this reporting that shows this dramatic increase in blood transfusions. And what is clear is that it's becoming more and more dangerous every day to be pregnant in the state of Texas. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that this law impacts everyone, not just people who are choosing to terminate pregnancies, but people who very much want their pregnancies and who find themselves in these situations where they are literally facing the possibility of death because they cannot get the care that they need. And there are so many stories out there like that now of of women who have faced that situation. And I think it's really important that we continue to talk about this, that we don't allow it to be normalized. And again, thanks to the reporting of ProPublica, we have yet one more piece of information to inform the public about, and hopefully to inform their voting behavior. I know a lot of people in Texas who said that abortion was one of the most important issues for them when they went to vote this last election cycle. And yet, for many, it was number 2 or 3, because their concerns about their family economies rose to a greater extent, and that's really how they made their decisions. However, there were many people, in fact, Planned Parenthood Texas Vote spent a lot of time talking to low propensity voters who hadn't showed up in the last 2 election cycles, and really targeting those that we knew cared about reproductive rights. And we were able to turn out 55,000 who hadn't turned out in the last 2 election cycles because we informed them. And that's got to be an important part of what campaigns do in the 26th election as well.
Kavita, a number of Republican politicians in Texas and elsewhere have said they didn't intend for these laws to be interpreted this way, to restrict care for those who are not having abortions, they're having miscarriage or other kinds of complications. In fact, there was a woman from a congresswoman from Florida, Kat Cammack, who complained that when she had an ectopic pregnancy, she was unable to get the care that she needed because of a law she had supported in the state that she said was being misinterpreted because of fear mongering from the left, that too many doctors were worried about potentially, being prosecuted or what have you if they did if they treated her. And she said that was not how the law was supposed to be written or supposed to be interpreted. It's only the left that's leading to that sort of cautious behavior from doctors. Is there a way to write these laws that supposedly comports with the intentions of lawmakers, of conservative lawmakers who say that they really only want to target abortion?
Yeah, that's a question I can't answer as a reporter. I mean, I have to try to document the impacts of policy. But I do think that the hospitals do bear some responsibility, and thus we did a story a few months ago looking at sepsis rates and second trimester pregnancy loss, which have gone up also dramatically in Texas. But we found regional differences, and when we looked into it more, we found that this had gone up dramatically in Houston, 62%, and that correlated with policies that the hospitals were either telling their doctors not to offer this care until the patients showed more signs of infection, or they were just telling doctors they were on their own and they would figure out their own legal care. And then we saw in Dallas that the sepsis rate rose much more slow. It was 25%. And hospitals there, we were able to show in depth how a major hospital there had at first changed their policy that way, and after looking at the harm of what women were experiencing, changed it back to the standard of care.
Perhaps inserting red tape and more bureaucracy into personal decisions between patients and their doctors is a disaster. So Wendy Davis and Kavita Sarana, thank you so much for being with us.